So in this video, we're going to add, subtract, and multiply polynomial expressions. So the first one, we've got negative 8 x to the fourth plus 13 minus 9x squared. And I'm going to subtract 8 minus 2x to the fourth. Okay, so how do I do this? Well, first thing, we got to make sure we don't mess up. We've got a negative going on right here. Okay, we've got a negative. So what are we going to do? Well, it's understood when there's a negative in here that there is a negative 1 on the outside of this parentheses. Now, this negative 1 is going to distribute to each piece in the parentheses here. That's the distributive property. So what does this become when I multiply this out? A negative 1 times positive 8 gives me a negative 8. And then this negative 1 times the negative 2 gives me a positive 2x to the fourth. Okay? So that's the first thing we do. Now, over here, I didn't have a negative on the outside. It's just by itself, so I'm just going to bring it down. Negative 8x to the fourth plus 13 minus 9x squared. Now, I've got this new line here, and my question is, when I'm adding or subtracting, are there any terms that I can combine together so that it can simplify? All right. Now, you ask yourself, does it have the same DNA, right? So the first term I run into an x to the fourth. So that's 4 x's. Does any other term have the same DNA? Well, there's no x's for that term, so that one can't combine. There's only 2 x's here, so that's not 4, so it's not enough to combine it. No x's here, but lo and behold, there's a term, there's 2, and then it's x to the fourth here. So your DNA matches, it's x, 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 and then over here your DNA is the same, x, 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 x. So I have negative 8 here and positive 2 here. So negative 8 and positive 2 make negative 6. And then how many total? Negative 6 x to the fourth. Okay? So I'm combining those together. I'm combining the negative 8 x to the fourth plus 2 x to the fourth, and I get negative 6 total. All right? So then the next term I've got is 13. Okay, 13 has no variables. This one's got variables, so that's not going to combine. This one has no variables, so I'm going to combine the positive 13 and the negative 8 to get a positive 5. Okay. And then last, I've got a negative 9x squared, and there's nothing else left, so that's just negative 9x squared. Okay, now just, because I'm cuckoo, I'm going to write this in descending order. So right now this term is a degree 4. This term is a degree, well, there's no variable, so that's degree 0. And this term is a degree 2. So rewriting this in descending order, I start with the highest degree term, that's negative 6x to the fourth. And then the next degree is negative 9x squared. And then the last one is plus 5. And so this is my answer, simplified. I can't combine the x to the fourth with any of them. I can't combine the x squared with anything, and I definitely can't combine this constant with anything. So that's as simplified as we can get it. All right, so that's kind of adding and subtracting into one problem. I guess we could make up one. So like x squared minus 3x plus 2, and then plus x cubed minus 4x squared plus 5. Okay, so when there's a plus, you don't have to do any distributions. We just kind of connect everything up. And so I'm going to start with the biggest term. So I see x squared, x, and constant, and then I see x cubed, and then x squared, and then my constant. Okay, so what can I combine? Well, x cubed is all by itself. It's the only one. X squared, let's see, x squared, I have an x squared here, and I have a negative 4x squared. That's a total, so negative 4 plus, well, how many? That's an understood 1. So that's negative 3x squared. Okay, do I have any x's? Yeah, I got an x here. I got no x's over there, so that's a negative 3x. And then constants, I have a 2 and I have a 5. That makes 7, positive 7. So this is as simplified as we can get. Okay? Now let's try, now that we've done subtraction, addition, let's do multiplying. So let's multiply. Let me show you how to multiply. So say I have 7 times 3x plus 1. What would I do here? Okay, this is the distributive property. We take the number on the outside and we distribute it in just like we did that minus earlier. And I distribute it into each piece that's separated by a plus or a minus, okay? So each piece is separated by a plus or a minus. So this is like 7 times 3x and then plus 7 times 1. Okay, so what does that equal? 7 times 3x is 21x. And then 7 times 1 is 7. Okay, so that would be multiplying it out right there. Now, that's a monomial times a binomial. What happens if I multiply 2 binomials together? What in the world am I going to do? 7y squared plus x multiplied by y squared minus 5x. This is something that's called a double distribute. So instead of just distributing the 7 through to each piece in the parentheses, now I take this 7y squared and I distribute it to each piece here. But then on top of that, I'm going to take this x and I'm going to distribute it to each piece there. So a clever way to remember this, I like to call this the FOIL. Why do I call it the FOIL? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply out the first, the outer, the inner, and then the last. Okay? So the FOIL technique. So 7y squared plus x times y squared minus 5x. Okay, so first, that's the first here and the first here. When I multiply those two together, I get 7y squared times y squared. Outer, the outside. Okay, so this is my outside and this is my outside. It's the two most extremes. So when I multiply those two outsides, what do I get? I get plus a positive 7y squared times a negative 5x. Okay. Inner, the inside, so that's this term, this x, and this y. Okay, that's the inside there. So I'm going to multiply those two insides together. I have a positive x times a y squared. Okay. And then last, my last, that's going to be the x, that's the last position. And then the last one for that second one, that's the x here, the negative 5x. So I have a positive x times a negative 5x going on there, okay? Now that I have first, outer, inner, last, FOIL, I can go through here and figure out if anything simplifies. When I multiply out, I have 7 times y squared is y to the 4th. There's 4 of those y's. Plus, now, hold up. Negative 5 times a positive 7. What's a negative times a positive number? That is actually a negative number. So that's negative 35. And then what do I have? I have y squared x, okay? This next one here is x, y squared. Can't combine things with different bases like that. Okay, and then I have a positive and a negative, so that makes a negative 5. X times x is x squared. Okay, is there anything I can do to simplify here? Well, yes, sirree, Bob, I can. Look, I know that this looks like a different creature, but at the end of the day, you got to think about what DNA does it have. It has one x and it has two y's. Same here, it has one x and it has two y's. So if they have the same DNA, what do? We combine. And so this is understood to be a 1 here if there's no number in front. So I have a negative 35 and a plus 1, so that's negative 34 xy squared. I put my x before y just because that's how it is in the alphabet. If you put y squared x, that would be okay. All right, so just keep that in mind. Depending on how the homework software is, if it counts it wrong, that might be what it's looking for you to put in alphabetical order. But for me, that's perfectly fine. So this, I can't do anything with that, so that's 7y to the 4th. And then this right here, I can't combine that with anything. That's just minus 5x squared. So that DNA doesn't match up with that DNA, so that's all we can do at this point. So that, my friends, is how you multiply binomials together. Now, you're probably not going to run into this, but I want to go ahead and just show it to you just in case in case you did run into it. So say you had like x plus 2 times, so a binomial times some trinomial, like x cubed minus 5y plus 1. Okay? So how would I do this? All right? So now what you would do is you would take this x value and you distribute to every term in here, just like you had before, right? And then you do the same thing for that 2. You distribute it into every term, and so you just multiply, and you're going to have to multiply it out a couple of times, right? So x times x cubed, that's x times x cubed, and then plus x times negative 5y, that's the second one there. And then the last one is x times a 1, okay? And then when I multiply down here, that's 2 times x cubed, and then 2 times negative 5y, and then 2 times 1, okay? And when I multiply that out, I get x to the 4th, and then that's actually minus 5xy plus x plus 2x cubed minus 10y plus 2. Is there anything that I can combine here? Well, the highest degree term looks like this x to the 4th. Then I've got a 2x cubed. And then I have an xy term, minus 5xy. And then I have an x and a y, so those are both degree 1, so it doesn't matter the order you write those. And then last I have this constant here. So each one of those creatures have a different DNA, so you can't combine any of those together. But that would be how you would multiply through if you had a binomial versus a multiplied by a trinomial. Okay. All right, guys, hopefully this helps you out when you're going through and multiplying. But really, the FOIL here, I cannot stress how important it is for you to know how to FOIL, okay? In a future video, I'm going to show you how to do the opposite of FOIL, meaning we start with this, and then we get back to this right here, okay?